All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back after everyone's lengthy Thanksgiving break, I'm sure. First order of business, the meeting minutes from October 27th.
At your places are copies if you need to review them quickly, and for those online, they were in the calendar invitation if you were able to retrieve them.
Yeah.
Did we pull in Mr. Mackey, Ms. Brown? She's on the other side.
She's not on yet.
Okay,
As soon as she popped up, I'll bring her in.
okay, great.
We'll catch her up.
All right, so let me do a roll call.
Yeah, I think that'd be appropriate.
All right, so this is for approval of minutes. A motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Wow, that was quick.
What you now?
We're all to rest. There was some talk over here. So.
Is that you?
No.
Greg?
Greg did.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Unless there's any discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Crucial.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes. Ms. Blair.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Page.
Yep.
Ms. Brown is not here at the moment. Ms. Hill.
Yes.
Mr. Lonigan.
Yes.
Ms. McNally.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Ms. Margie Boucher.
Yes.
Mr. Penny.
Yes.
Ms. LeBar.
Yes.
Mr. Thompson.
Yes.
Mr. Quimby.
Yes.
And Mr. Christensen.
Yes.
All right.
Excuse me, I'm on the wrong.
Minutes approved.
I know.
Excellent. Update on public participation.
If any are public in the audience with question?
Oh, excuse me.
Mr. Page.
Yeah,
Come on up.
Any particular place you want me? Is like Kathy there? Is me, Kathy and Danny?
Oh, perfect. That's me.
Good evening. I've had the opportunity to watch some of your meetings. I'm impressed in the way it's going forwards. But I have a basic question. Does anyone have a feel for what the town thinks we can afford for a new school? I mean, when I go out to buy a house, I don't have a realtor show me $1 million houses because I don't have that kind of budget. And I think when we start talking $150 million or so for school, I don't think the town has that kind of budget. I mean, somewhere in my mind, I was trying to put like 125 million on a cap. And I was just wondering if this committee had ever thought of saying, you know what, I think this is about the most the town's gonna approve. Let's design something to this and see what it looks like. And then at that point, there may be some tweaking, but I mean, I would love to just be able to say, hey, there's no cap. Let's do whatever we need because we know we need all different things. And I'm just concerned. I just don't want to see all this effort put into something and then have the voters go, we cannot afford this. So that was my thought process. I just wanted to relay that to you.
No, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's something that certainly is on this committee's mind quite a bit. So I appreciate it. For comments. Anybody online, Mr. Mackey?
Nobody's online. That's it, yeah.
Move on from public comment.
Yes, please. Mr. Murphy, an update from our owner's project manager.
Sir, thank you, Steve. So we will start off today, as we always do, which is for the quick look at the schedule, where we're at with the schedule. So we are now, as you see up on the board here, we're now over the halfway mark on the overall preferred schematic report submittal development. So that's going just as planned. So our team continues to progress the PSR deliverables and further develop the new construction option, the preferred new construction option at this point, which you will be seeing some updates from the design team later on in the presentation for. You can see our next scheduled activity is cost estimating. So in the next few weeks, the design team will be formalizing documents to be sent to the estimators. We've spoken with the design team. I know right here, we do have this shown right now as starting in early January, January 4th and spanning out through January 25th, when we're getting the reconciled cost estimates to show to you folks. We've talked amongst ourselves, and we think it's going to be more beneficial to pull those dates forward a bit, to try to get the documents to the estimators, perhaps I think before Christmas, with the intent of getting reconciled estimates back by January 19th, so that we have that information to sit down with you folks and present it and sift through and compare, and have some time before we do submit the PSR submittal to MSBA, which is targeted for February 14th. So that gives us a little time there. And we can talk about, I think later on in the presentation, we're going to talk about our next meetings for the SBC and when that makes sense to meet with you folks. But as you can see on the schedule here, we will need your approval before submitting to the MSBA. And so overall approval of the PSR is scheduled for April 26th of 2023. So that's just a little snapshot of the module 3. So as we take a look at closing out module 3 and moving into module 4 schematic design, our team just kind of wanted to get the ball rolling, take a look a little bit further down the road today to explore the project delivery methods that will be at the town's disposal for deciding kind of which way this project, the construction work, gets contracted for and carried out. And so we do have a presentation today that we'll be going through today. It's strictly informational. So there's no vote required today. We are still very early on in the process. We don't need to designate whether or not we're going design bid build or CM at risk at this point. We just want to kind of get the information in front of you folks, have some healthy banter amongst ourselves, and then carry this forward should we need to and readdress. So any questions, I guess, with the schedule first before we get into that presentation?
Just clarification. So cost estimating is now giving us more refined costs on where we are with some of the designs that we'll see later on in this presentation.
Absolutely, absolutely.
To the point that Mr. Page was making. All right, so we'll have more specific information as we enter into the new year.
Yep.
So is that a detailed cost estimate in terms of this portion will cost this will cost this? Because if we're looking to chop off some huge percentage, as just discussed, we're gonna need to look at some things to cut. Are those listed out?
We're still pricing 3 options.
Okay,
That's what the MSBA makes us do.
what are the 3?
Option 1, which was the base code repair, option 2C, the ad reno. We have to price that one as well. And then option the 3C, which is the preferred.
Right, so that's the way we're headed. We're heading towards 3C. I would anticipate. We have a number, a relative number. We've tried to cut things. It hasn't been possible, understandable, because we're trying to get everything we can get. I just want to show what certain numbers would get us. I don't know how we do that.
So it is a detail in that you can see where, what foundation is, but it's still on a per square foot basis based on perimeter information, things like that. So since we don't have all the window openings, you're not getting that kind of detail yet. You'll get that at the end of schematic design.
Yep.
But you'll get a good comparison between those numbers, which is a little bit more helpful. And we're dialing in a little bit further. They understand a little bit more the systems that we're looking at. So again, it's still on a kind of per square foot basis. It's not nearly as detailed as you'll get at the end of schematic design.
So just to go one step further, if the town council is looking for us to cut substantially to the budget, and can we put a number on LCAT and IT specifically?
Yes.
On the building? Okay.
Yes.
Thank
Right.
you.
So today we're going to go through that in portion that's now in the project.
Okay.
I wanted to talk a little bit about any other information, any other costs. Remember at the meeting last in front of the community, there were questions about, infrastructure for lighting and things.
Right.
So things like that, I'd just like a list of anything we can use this time with our cost estimators to get more information on. Like we did last time, we made sure they pulled out things so that we could say, here's what an extra turf field costs, and then we can eliminate it,
Right.
So it's really still in that process. So, yeah.
Okay.
I would think though that if we are given a target budget after we get out of this, after we select an option, that's when the real V would happen in schematic.
Yeah, in schematic
Yeah.
design, yeah, not between.
After the cost estimate.
Yeah, this is again, informational for you. If it helps you set your project budget.
Yep.
That's why we want to give you more time, so that that debate about project budget can get a little bit more firm, because we always want to make a clearer statement on that in every phase.
When is that time? Because we go from 14. Or it not until the March date. April date, the April 26th, soon before that.
Bring the package to the MSBA on February 9th.
Oh, okay.
That's the 14th.
14th, right. So we have a week, and the 8th is when we were looking for your approval. So we have between roughly January 19th and February,
3 weeks or so.
yeah. Mid-February to get that.
On the 19th, are the documents already reconciled when we get them, or are we getting two different estimates?
You're getting reconciled.
Reconciled, yeah.
You're welcome to sit down on the reconciliation if you want.
We'll get lunch. You'll need.
And then the 26th is the MSBA board approval.
So they'll have
Submit
our
on the
submission
team.
for a while. They'll be
Yeah.
looking through that. That's the formal sit down board directors meeting.
They get 2 months, we get 3 weeks. Seems fair. MSBA, love them. All right, other questions? I do love them, by the way.
I know you love it.
That's about me.
They raised the reimbursement rate by $100.
You'll love me.
We'll love them more.
Your biggest fan.
Hoping.
It's rumored that it's gonna be significant, is what,
That is good
I
to,
don't know what their definition of significant is versus ours, so.
I think it's great that you're hearing rumors
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
That's what I was hoping.
And they stopped all the accelerated repair
There
projects.
got paused, I saw that.
Oh,
I do.
They have a number
appreciate
of projects
trying,
in
hopefully.
process
Yeah,
whose budgets just got blown up, and so they're trying.
Yeah.
that could be very helpful to us, Ralph.
But if they raise their cap on square footage, that would be.
They're gonna raise it, it's just a matter of how much, yeah. In my opinion.
They might be really excited.
What was the last move? $30?
It's gonna be hopefully more than that.
35?
Unprecedented.
I'll find out.
Don't make any promises. Optimistic.
I'm feeling 2023 is gonna be a great year.
Good man.
All right.
You guys gonna take us through your thoughts
Yeah.
on procurement?
So Dale, our boss called, he was gonna do this presentation, called me at 2 and told him he's got RSV and can't, so. I'm very familiar with the material, so I'll go through it, but I may read a little bit because I didn't prep that much, thinking Dale was gonna do it, so.
she'll let you.
Skip to the next slide, I guess. Next one. So in 2004, they had chapter 193. They revised a lot of the construction bidding laws. It was the most comprehensive construction reform since 81. Higher thresholds for general bidders and file sub bids, decamp certification required for all file sub bids, et cetera, et cetera. This is when they added chapter 149A, which is construction manager at risk as an option. If you want to do construction management at risk 149, we have to submit a application to the Inspector General for approval, and we have to tell them why we're doing it, what we think the benefits are, and things of that nature. I've done it multiple times. It's not a hard lift, but it's just a step you have to take in the process. So there's really, skip another slide. There's two methods available to us, chapter 149 and chapter 149A. Chapter 149 is the traditional design bid build. So your architect will complete drawings. All drawings will be complete. We'll pre-qualify file sub bids. We'll also pre-qualify general bidders, general contractors. And then we go through a bid process, and it's open, bid opening day, open to low bid and accept the low bidder. There's really no de-scoping or review. At that point, it's incumbent on Doran Whittier and to produce
Or Jones, what's it in this case?
Yeah, my bad.
I was gonna let that go.
I don't know where it came from, but yeah, Jones was at SMMA to produce a complete set of drawings without holes.
John, excuse me one second. Does everybody in the room understand that what filed sub bid means and?
I'll get to that in a second.
Excuse me.
No, that's okay. Then chapter 149A is construction management at risk. The theory here is you are bringing a construction partner in while design is still ongoing, and they become part of the team, and they're supposed to represent your interests. That works sometimes it doesn't, you don't get as good a partner. It's a qualifications based selection, so we'll send an RFQ out, we'll send an RFP out. They'll submit their credentials, their previous experience. There'll be some fee information, and then there'll be a committee that the building committee will form that will review the proposals, go to interviews and make a selection, very similar to what you did with OPM, but maybe a little more involved.
John, may I ask a question?
Yes,
So this, the CM at risk, we still have the OPM because that's the OPM is really in our interest,
Yes.
right? Correct? Okay, just wanted to make sure.
our responsibility is 100% to represent you at all
Right.
times.
Whereas the CM,
CM, we hope that
Not.
we get a partner who is,
correct,
Yeah.
but it's important that we have the OPM.
Yes.
Who's done this before, okay.
and part of that, the previous slide, the act that revised that's when the OPM requirements were enacted, back in 2004, I think it was.
This group, eventually, the school building committee will make a decision between these two options.
Correct, yes.
Yes, and then a group or a selection committee from this group would also then select the CM via the interview and proposal process.
And would that be a process that is structured by the MSBA as
No.
other processes were?
No, it's really local.
Wow.
They don't have any,
They give you a lot of latitude in that one.
they don't have any votes or anything per se, but.
Are there cost differences on this and timing differences on?
Yep.
Yeah, he'll talk.
You're going
That'll,
there?
yeah, we'll get into that.
Um,
Just before we move off this informational, these are the two delivery methods that will be compared for this project, but there are two other delivery methods. So if you're familiar with another one, you don't see it up here. Design build is another common one, but that's typically used on public works projects, and CM agency is another delivery type, which is not used in Massachusetts. So that's why we're just honing in on these two delivery types for today.
That's CM agent is New York State, that's a free for all because the state holds all the file sub-bid contracts, they hold the general contractors, and then everyone fights. I've had the pleasure of doing a couple of jobs in New York and crazy. So general project risks regardless of delivery method, unforeseen conditions. On new builds or jobs where we're digging, we think 30% of your risk is in the ground. When we did Taconic High School, we started digging and we found out that a construction company had used it as a dump site, and we found $1 million worth of contaminated stuff. So old utilities, but a lot of risk is in the ground, is our experience. But in renovations, when you open up walls, you never know what you're going to find. So it's risk in renovations. New construction, it's a little more straightforward, a little less risk in that respect, except in the ground. Unqualified subcontractors, poor performance. You try to pre-qualify people. We got caught up with Coughlin Electric, who was going out of business at Taconic, and ended up being a lawsuit between them and Gilbane. It wasn't pretty. You try to avoid that, but you don't see these things all the time. They sometimes come out of the woodwork. Subcontractor and trade contractor failures. Again, we try to we'll bond everyone, so we'll try to mitigate that risk, but these things do happen. Future cost, construction cost escalation. We're hoping, I've actually heard estimators tell me that they think it's settling down and they're using less escalation recently. Working around occupied facilities, that's certainly something we're gonna have here. We're gonna be building right next to your existing high school. Complex site logistics, I think we might have some of that here based on parking and, fields and things of that nature. Adversarial team environment, this does happen on occasion where, people argue a lot. Bid protests, you see these every once in a while, that's incumbent on us and your design team to make sure that doesn't happen. And bid coverage, we've run into this more and more lately, where contractors are being more selective on what they bid. So ideally, we get 3+ bidders in every trade. We've had some struggles with this, more recently because of just the economic, arena we're in, but, hopefully that doesn't happen here. Cost implications is, so there's 18 file sub trades. Don't ask me to name all of them, but it's all the mechanical trades. It's tile, flooring, painting, acoustical ceilings, yeah, elevators, masonry. The things that are not filed trade bids are concrete, site work, drywall, things of that nature. So by statute, we have to bid these, we have to pre-qualify, we have to advertise, we have to pre-qualify subcontractors. And this is a situation regardless of CMR or design bid build, we have to do a public opening. So we'll work with your procurement people to make sure that happens. The direct subs I talked about in a design bid build are the choice of the general contractor. So they'll choose the site guy, they'll choose the concrete guy, drywall guy. We don't really have any input in that demo contractor. I think when you're in a bid situation like that, the general contractor is really kind of forced into taking the low bidder, whether or not he's qualified, because they have to win the bid, and then they worry about making it work after the fact. In the CM at risk side, the things that are not file sub bids, we typically get a opportunity to comment on the bid list. We ask the general contractors, the CMs, to pre-qualify people, and then we get a say in who actually gets awarded that work. There's some things that factor into that WB, MB participation. So it's not always the low guy, it's the low, what's the word I'm looking for, a low qualified bidder.
Lowest responsible.
Those responsible, yeah. Contractor contingency in a design bid build is not transparent. I assume they're carrying something in their bid. Back when I was in that world, we did. In the CMR, it's visible, it's transparent, and we have a say in how it's spent. In the design bid build, contractor's objective is to maximize profit. While we've in the CM at risk, one of the things we get is a fee percentage as part of their response to the proposal. It's usually somewhere 2.5% to 3% of construction costs, and that's what the fee is. So that's kind of fixed up front. Anything you want to add there? The next slide is so design bid build contract types. It's based on cost of work, general conditions, and desired profit by GC. The price is a lump sum bid that's fixed at time of contract, and then it's going to be amended via change orders. Plan is based on plans and specs, as we talked about. Savings, if there's savings on the job, outside us giving deductive change orders to them, it all goes to the benefit of the contractor. There's no opportunity for incentive or negotiation. The CM at risk is a little different, based on bids for work packages. General conditions contingency are set. It's essentially a cost plus contract with a guaranteed maximum. Ben and I have done a couple jobs like this in Springfield, where we are one of the jobs was to give back a 5 million savings on the job. The other one is trending towards 3-ish. But the Conic, which I alluded to a little bit before, we had some issues. And, that was basically done for the guarantee maximum price. So it's not a guarantee, but oftentimes there's givebacks and GMPs. Any savings? Yeah.
If I could interrupt, what jobs have you done in the recent past for Springfield?
DeBerry, Homer is ongoing, and then Brightwood. Yeah,
Brightwood Lincoln.
and then we did a series of
The school
accelerator
has
repairs.
a wing for each school?
Correct, yes.
And they were design bid build or CMN?
CMN.
Yeah.
DOC on Brightwood, and Fontaine's doing DeBerry Homer. Both very good contractors. Both contractors would pursue this job. I think they both have roots in East Long Meadow, and I think the Fontaines were from East Long
Fontaine's
Meadow.
are-
Any savings on GMP reverts to the owner by contract. We can negotiate a lot of things on a GMP versus have no power to do that. And the one thing I think that gets overlooked, I think this is the big reason Springfield does it, we can include allowances within the GMP and holds to protect the number. You can't do that in a lump sum contract. So everything then goes to the MSBA as a change order, so.
I have a question. So with the guarantee maximum price, when do we know what the guarantee maximum price is going to be? Because when you do the design bid bill,
You're done.
you kind of know what it is up front.
Mhm.
But with the guarantee maximum price, when do we know that? You're into the job at that point, right?
Well, if you do early packages and you start early, that's one of the things we'll talk about. But usually when the 100% CDs are issued and all the scope is bid,
Mhm.
that's when you set the GMP. So you may have started foundations or site work already. But the rest of the work still has not been bid yet.
So they usually come on board around 60% is what I had read, and so it's quite a while then that because they're helping with this whole process, right? And then,
Yeah, we would recommend they bring them on so they're available for the DD estimate. So in Springfield, especially at Brightwood, we had a lot of concerns about contaminated soil on the site because it was an old junkyard. So it was very important that we balanced the site, so we didn't export any material offsite. So DOC was extremely helpful in helping us, achieve that, working with the design team to achieve that. And I think that was a real benefit to that job. So. I kind of lost my place here. Design bid build is plans and specs. So if it's on the plans, they own it. If it's not on the plans, they're gonna submit a change order to you. That is somewhat true for a GMP, but the thought is in a GMP CMR at risk that they're gonna fill the blanks for you in the GMP. That's why you're hiring them, for their expertise to help you fill any blanks.
sorry, can I ask another question?
Yep.
So is that how you have seen it happen in the past, doing this CM at R, that they do help and there's not many change orders?
We have a fantastic experience at DeBerry right now. We're at 0.7% of contract value and change orders. It's extraordinarily.
Very low.
Very good architect too. I'm sure we're gonna get the same here. So it varies job to job. The situation we had at Taconic where we found $1 million of dirty dirt. Maybe we should have done more borings. Maybe there should have been some more investigation before bid time, but that was just unfortunate circumstance. So.
Yeah, it directly correlates to the quality of your documents,
Right.
right? You can't buy anything cost effectively if there's ambiguity or things that are missing or.
Again, it goes back to the qualification-based process and why it's so important to get the right.
Oh, well, what I'm speaking to is Dory and her team,
Yeah.
as they're putting together their stuff,
Mhm.
right? Everything needs to fit, right? You can't have a pipe going through a piece of steel.
Right.
Right, you can,
Well.
but it'll be more expensive.
So I think the other thing is that the CMR is involved, as you're saying earlier. So they're looking closely at the documents, not in just a 1 month window of time trying to come up with a bid number, but actually they have more exhaustive involvement with us. And if there's things that we don't see that are constructability challenges to them, they're voicing them. So frankly, I just think that allows you to get to that bid get 100% and have a lot of those issues that you're gonna vet after the bid.
So that's your experience as well, Dory?
Down the change orders. The other thing that brings the change orders down is that you have both contingency. You have a different motivation to handle that money differently in the CMR. So it's kind of just a less contentious way of dealing with those change orders. It's not a motivation to lodge a change order for the CMR. So it allows that to be a little bit less contentious and, because they're not going to benefit from that change order in the same way as the DBB. So that also frankly reduces the likelihood of those change orders happening.
Thank you.
Why don't we move on to the next slide, I guess. Quality control, the design bid build, it's a lump sum process. They want to get the work done quickly as possible, maybe not as attentive to quality control. Heavy owner requirement required in the design bid build, from a quality control standpoint. And once again, plans and specs. And the CM selection again is based on qualifications, so we're hoping to hire a partner, someone who's going to also look out for our interest in the field. And the constructability reviews, which Dory spoke to a minute ago, would happen prior to bid. Subcontractors.
Question
Yep.
on quality control. So under design bid build, it falls on the owner, but then in partnership with you guys. Right?
Yes.
Making sure that.
Yeah,
we're on
yeah.
top of that.
That's one of our primary responsibilities, to
Right.
make sure that things are being installed per plans and specs. And your architect will make periodic visits to, usually weekly, and do their own observations. But,
And that would come through not only the daily and weekly visits, but then I'm assuming we're gonna be having weekly project meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we'll have full-time staff on site during that. Subcontractors, some of this is a little repetitive, but file sub bids, so the way the design bid build works, you do the file sub bids first, and then you pause a couple weeks and do the general bidders. So the general bidders have to carry those file sub bids in their numbers. There's some shenanigans that go along where people will restrict their bids to, so say ABC Masonry doesn't like Fontaine, they can restrict their bid that Fontaine can't use their number. So then Fontaine has to use the next low bidder. And, sometimes, someone may get stuck with a subcontract that they haven't had success with in the past. So there's some of that goes on as well. And there's really no ability to, before they submit their general bid, to vet these subcontractors. On the CM side, the one big advantage I see is that the CMs are able to participate in the scope of work for the file sub bidders. And for the bids that are not file sub, they 100% get to participate. So there's things like staging for the mason, who has the staging for the mason? Is it the general contractor, or is it the mason himself? So there's an ability for the CM to involve some of that. Schedule. But as we mentioned before, we usually sign our CM up after design development, perhaps later if you so choose. One of the strategies for this job is to try to do site work, concrete, and potentially steel, or at least order the steel and get it in fabrication in advance of Dory and her team completing the drawings. That would pick up I think at least 6 months for schedule wise, if we were able to do that. As opposed to waiting until all the drawings are done and then bid and everything, and then starting the whole process then. So we've successfully done that multiple times with the CM. Start before the GMP is fully set and the drawings are complete. Next. So I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it, and Dory's team pointed out to me, their estimator thinks that there's a 5% premium for CM at risk. So your initial cost is going to be 5% more than what you get in a design bid build. I don't know if that percentage is right, but I think the concept is correct, that, you're gonna pay more upfront. Because there's, I think, number one, they're gonna have their contingency in it, and there's gonna be holes and allowances in there to protect the number. So I think there's, definitely validity to it. What happens at the end of the day, I haven't done that study and it's kind of hard because once you go that route, you can't. If we did this project design bid build, I'd never be able to tell you what it was as a risk. So it's hard to make that comparison, but you look at some of the change orders, values or percentages that we have in jobs, I think they are less on a CM job. So what is, but initially the pricing is gonna be a little heavier on a CM project.
Yeah, but there's value to kind of the intangible or, schedule wise. I mean, maybe you can't put a number on that, but if you get 6 months, you're building 6 months earlier. I think there's a lot of value in that. That would offset that.
Yeah, that comparison really isn't that difficult. You look at your GMP and your closeout value, and you look at your lump sum bid and your closeout value. You just say, all right, as a ratio, how does this feel to me? Right? I mean, the stuff that you're covering with holds and allowances, it's gonna be in the job.
Right.
One way or another.
Yeah.
Either you're getting a change down the road that you now have to sign for and the state has to approve. Or you've managed, you knew it was coming, right? It was an obvious gap or it was some type of, unclear scope item that someone just said, look, let's carry some money for this. We know it's gonna happen. If it doesn't happen, it's still our money.
Yeah,
So the estimate is the end cost is 5% less. Is that correct?
I'm sorry.
The end cost is 5% less or the initial price?
I'm gonna argue that's the initial price.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we have to ask the town for, would that change based on one or the other? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
For the, yes.
5%.
Then you have my vote.
And
No, hold on.
Wait, wait, wait.
Let's just be clear.
For 6 months, 5% is really, that's what we're talking about, right?
No.
I don't
know.
I don't think it's quite as.
Tell me it's not that simple.
Well, Greg, I think what we're saying is the initial cost, your initial contract cost is gonna be 5% higher on a CM versus a design bid build.
Yep.
Where does it end up at the end of the day? And I'm making an argument, it's gonna end up about the same.
Oh,
See, and we're gonna have another conversation about this before we make it.
100%.
Many.
Because I come from my husband just got off a job, it was East Hampton. It was design bid build. It was on time. It was during COVID, under budget by about $10 million. Less paperwork this is his thought process when he comes through, and he'd be more than happy to discuss it with anybody. Because our world is different now, the CMR at risk very well may be what is a better situation for us as a team, and I understand that. But I know historically, and he's been in the business for 40 years, he would far rather have the design clean, pinned down, done with it, even to the exception that it would be a 6 month longer job, especially because we're not renting trailers and we're not doing all that kind of stuff, as opposed to going in, having a certain percentage of the design done so that we can get running with it and get prices as we're going. But we really don't know what that end price ultimately is going to be until almost 30 to 60% into the job, which makes me clutch my heart, because I feel like I understand if you don't get the right contractor to bid on this. But we can also with a CMR at risk could be the same thing. Your prices aren't going to be as clean and neat, and they're going to have a lot more change orders. So it's like, I'm sitting here conflicted because I know you guys I could just tell you prefer the CMR at risk. And I don't disrespect that thought process, but at the same time, I know my life at home is far better with a design build project than it is with a CMR at risk. So I just want us to really look at it as we're moving forward and we're getting closer to that point where we make that decision. Maybe for my part, I could get some numbers for you with some ideas of what's happened, and you guys too, because I know Skanska has done a lot of CMR at risk as contractors, right? And I know that that's kind of what you guys have done too, and you do great work that way. And if that's what you're comfortable with, that very well may be better for what we are comfortable with. But if we're coming with the price and it's 5% more, asking people for 5% more at CMR at risk. Ultimately, we don't want to lie to our people and tell them it's going to be less money, but if we can save anything by doing a design build, you know, unless you really feel the way things are now, we've got to do it CMR at risk. You know, I think we got to think it's not the same world it was 3 years ago.
So Beth, what you're calling design build, I think.
I'm sorry, design bid build. Sorry. Yeah, that's what I mean.
So I'm curious when
And getting stressed out.
you said that the
Sorry.
10 million in under budget in East Hampton, that must, the contractor didn't give any money back, right? That was.
They actually had money that they were able to use for all kinds of things. Furniture, instruments.
Yeah, he didn't give it back. It was a low bid. He came in.
Oh, yeah, so there's money in the budget.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's money.
I'm saying is it didn't go over budget. It came under budget, so they were able to upgrade a lot of things within the job. And they very well, when they were getting their prices, they might have bid, I think Fontaine was a contract. The prices he might have done higher knowing we were going into something, you know, but who knows?
And we're finishing a school that was a little bit later than Maple Street, but not by a lot. And both of those projects benefited from the COVID bidding environment.
Yeah,
The bids were low.
right.
So both of those towns ended up with 10 million extra to spend that they pretended they didn't have until the very end, and then they were rushing the money in to the project,
Right.
which I find isn't the best way to manage your money.
I think they were concerned about the prices escalating
Same thing happened.
because everything was happening so
Right,
fast.
so Gardner was similar, and Jones Whatsit has typically done more DBB than CMR. And we have always worked with Western Mass Communities who always say, we want the best value, best dollar.
Right.
Options, so that's why we've been in DBB longer.
Right.
Than SMMA probably has, because I think CMR took over faster on the east and it's come this way. And we were used to saying, yeah, okay, fine, that's what's best. I will say now that we've experienced both, there is a very significant feeling difference in it. I think our design package has to get to the same point. I do think it benefits to have the contractor involved to review the documents. I think the documents get a little stronger, but we're not dragging the design process into 60% of construction. We have to be there. It's just that after that process, when the town says, actually, we changed our minds about certain things in this plan, we want to change it, then we're both working together to solve it, which does happen.
Right.
All the way through the jobs. But what I do find funny, because in these public school projects, there is this sort of project budget that's established in this process of estimating that we're doing, right? Town commits to a number at SD, that number becomes the contract budget, essentially, project budget. And then if the bids come in low, you have extra money that you pretend you don't have, and then you have, in the DBB, you do tend to have an adversarial relationship that you're kind of working through. And then at the end, and everybody's afraid of, giving up change orders. Everybody, the contractor is looking for those change orders. So I would say we're used to it in that means that it's us who end up being in the front, in front of the client working through those issues with the contractor. By working through, I mean, basically battling change orders through, and it gets done and we can do it. And then at the end, though, then suddenly that money, if you were lucky to have had a low bid, then you're trying to figure out how to spend it, and you're spending it on furniture. The difference in my mind is that if that money were there in the contingency, the same thing would be happening, but you could be making better planned decisions about that throughout. And that feels very different and has a qualitative difference on the project typically, in a way that I think, if you're looking at things that are a little beyond the scope of the project now, but that you're very interested in, like, lighting for the fields, right? Then it's a different way of getting at that and solving it sometimes by having that contingency. It's more of an open book process of managing that. And it's true that where you are in the economy has a big impact on these choices and which one's better or worse, frankly, and how complex your schedule is has a big impact.
And one thing I didn't know is like, why can't they just give that money back to town? Why do they have to spend it?
Oh, they
can give it back.
And give it back, right?
They often can't. It's just
Okay.
often because it's a public allocation of funds. It often ends up being that this is the community's one opportunity to make these investments. And you've been pulling things out throughout that you really wanted. So there's often a motivation to actually make these, once in a generation investments somewhere along the way, things that you weren't able to do, that you've talked about doing. So, there's always a gray area of things that are important to the community.
All right.
And Beth, we're not against,
No, I understand that. It's a comfort level too, though, for you guys. I want you comfortable.
we, as a company, we've done our fair share of OPM work, design bid build, so.
What is your husband, what trade is he in?
He's a construction management. He was with Colliers and he actually was at Gardner about 2 weeks ago, but he's moved on to South O'Brien now, so he's different life now. So, but yeah, so that's what he's done for years, from the last job, the old way, to Tantascwa, all the way up through all kinds of schools the last 20+ years.
Yeah.
So. All right, thank you. I just, just kind of
No,
us to juggle it, because I just feel like it's a whole different way when we go out and do this now. It's not like it was. And, what might have worked in the past, this could be the worst thing we could do for ourselves right now. Or maybe just because the way the things are, the contractors will give us a really good price and stick with that price. But again, the prices is just so flexible right
It's
now.
also who you end up with, right?
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Fontaine's historically done DBB
Right.
and does CMR. And how different is their project gonna be between the two?
Yeah.
Whereas the DBB, the challenge can be, it's the low bidder. And you don't get that pre-qual opportunity. You can disqualify, frankly. But that's the challenge we've seen, is that, we know if it's DBB, we have to be prepared for the low bidder. I think John made that point. And if you're prepared for it, that's a different situation. But because CMR's come along, there's kind of been a separation of in the world of who's going for which types of jobs,
Okay.
which has over time started to change the picture for us.
Okay.
Beth, I would also add, I would love for Skanska to be perfectly comfortable with whatever we're doing.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, that's not my priority.
Right.
My
right.
priority is what's best for the town.
Well, no, I understand that, but with their comfort comes an
No,
easier job.
no, don't care.
Easier. Okay, we don't care.
Yeah.
So, all right, good. Thank you. I just wanted you guys to understand like where I'm coming from in my head. And that, it's, but I also feel like, I'm just really big in what happened was good 5 years ago today. So,
That's for sure.
Good question.
Yeah, really good question.
See if there's anything else here.
Summary.
All right, so you guys can read it. I can go through. CM hired early, design phase and services. We can interview and select the contractor versus design bid build. We're taking the low person. We're basing our selection on qualifications. Final sub bids are still bid competitively. What do you think? Final sub bids are 60% of the job?
Yeah, at least,
Yeah,
it's a big.
yeah. So it's a big chunk of it. So it's not like everything's negotiated. They become a member of the project team during design. They're supposed to be our partners. Constructability reviews, construction cost estimates, construction phasing, early bid packages. Premium cost involved in during design phase. Open book accounting, so we have the ability to, in a GMP contract, we can go audit everything. We can look at their billable rates, every bill they paid. Or charging us, we can go audit that. It's a guaranteed maximum price situation. Best suited for projects that are time sensitive, challenging, or defined or subject to potential changes, projects requiring high construction oversight due to site logistics, site phases, as well as multiple stakeholders. One for more page. Other questions?
So for the CMR, it's basically the guaranteed maximum price. It's their benefit, as long as they can stay under. That's.
Yeah. I do think there is a couple more pages. I don't want to take too much.
you guys find that if they ever get to that maximum price, that they cut back toward the end, because they can't get more money at that point? Or do you find at that point they really already have their people in and set and they just take the hit on the price?
So you're talking about staffing levels, supervision?
I'm talking about, so they give us our maximum price
Yeah.
and then toward the end of the job, there's been whatever's changed
Yeah.
along the way, change or whatever, and that they're getting toward the end. Do you find that they slack off on quality to make up for the difference? Because ultimately they want to make money too.
Yeah.
Right? And if the pricing has been coming in a little higher than they had originally, as it was originally bid as they go, right? Our guaranteed maximum price. If it's getting toward that, are we finding that we're kind of stuck? Because at that point, they're not going to charge us more, but they're also not going to give us this tile. We're going to get that one.
No, well, they can't because it's as specified by the architect. What I do see is sometimes, if the job's dragging on or it's a tough job, that they'll cut staff to reduce their costs.
Okay.
So,
They ultimately own the plans and the specs, Beth, but I would say if you're gonna see them skimping on anything, it's kind of how they deliver that to you, which would go with the staffing.
Okay.
so maybe,
Under a CMR,
Yeah, well, we're just saying if they're really right up against that number at the end of the day, yes, they still own delivering the project, absolutely. But what Beth was saying, since they have, that at the front of their mind that they're potentially losing money on the project, they might try to do whatever they can to protect their pocket, which we've seen very rarely.
yeah, I mean, it's conceivable, but there's legal remedy for all that.
Sure,
You're gonna contract some of that risk away.
Like, to your point, they might.
We'll have a project manager on 2 jobs instead of on 1. Kind of shuffling back and forth or something like that sometimes. Yeah, it's usually at the end of the job
Very rare, but I.
anyways.
For sure.
Just one more question. Dory, you had made a comment regarding changing the landscape with CMR, meaning that now some companies that used to bid projects are staying away from the design bid build.
Yeah, I think culturally, there's just a shift that's occurred in these environments. So it's a traditionally more, adversarial, I'd say, in the DBB. And thus, those firms that are quite substantially experienced doing it and doing it well are motivated to go to the CMR route. In the same way that, John's talking about CMR is like, it's a process that is more team oriented. There's a sense that you're both involved, both have a stake in it, the owner and the contractor. So that kind of creates a different culture. I generally see that contractors, are hiring staff around that. So there's a whole different kind of culture in the CMR firms than there is in the traditional contractor firms. And they don't kind of necessarily slide project to project the same way. Because there's different skill sets,
It's a different business model.
Yeah, it's a different business model.
there's definitely companies like Consigli used to do everything, bid and design, bid, build and same at risk.
Yeah,
They're not gonna,
they
do
won't do it.
they're not gonna bid anymore.
Yeah.
There's enough CM work out there.
Yeah.
Sean, what's the same way, they're not gonna do a competitive bid job.
Yeah, and I'd say working with Fontaine a lot, I've sort of seen their staffing and everything kind of
Shift a little
evolve
bit,
as they've
yeah.
gone towards CMR and they have a kind of different team.
If anyone, if you,
Something that was done more out east, and as it's moved, I think we were a little more, not that, I think that we did the design bid longer in this area in Western Mass than they did in Eastern Mass.
I think that's fair. If any of you know Dave Fontaine Senior or Junior, I'd encourage you to talk to them because they do both. So they can
Yeah.
tell you the pluses and negatives.
He was at our community
He
forum.
was, yeah. Why don't we just skip a couple slides here, Gordon, so we can finish up?
Don't do that.
No. One more. So these are the steps we have to do. So if we decided we wanted to do a CMR, CMR, we have to establish a pre-qualification committee, OPM designer, at least 2 public representatives. We have to do an RFQ, so they have to send their qualifications to us, and we can shortlist down who we think is qualified. And then we'd evaluate at least 3 CMs. Establish a selection committee. It could be the same committee as the pre-qualification committee. We prepare the RFP, send the RFP out, then we get the RFP, we receive, evaluate and rank. And then we'll interview these firms and then we negotiate the fee. We have the ability to negotiate certain things with them. The one step that's not listed here is obviously getting permission from the Inspector General to use 149A, but I haven't seen that as an obstacle in the past. So that's about it.
There was a phase when the MSBA actually gave incentive points
They did, yeah.
for doing CMR, which they quickly stopped doing because they realized.
They used to
that
give 2 points.
To incentivize.
They used to give 2 points and now they tell everyone that it costs more to do CMR.
That is confusing.
Yeah. So when do we probably need to make this decision during schematic design this summer sometime?
Yeah, I mean, the application to the OIG, that whole process takes about a month there. So if you were gonna go forward with that, I would say we'd probably want a CM on board, should that be the case. Right at the beginning on the onset of DD or as
Yeah,
quickly as we can get.
I think
involved in the
usually,
process.
yeah.
As soon as you have funding in place, the budget is agreed upon and we get the green light, I would think we would go right out to the CM world too. Okay, so we have some time. That's probably next November when we probably be.
So Dory,
finalizing
does this affect how we're gonna price this job and?
question
Yeah,
to you
yeah.
as the OPM.
Yeah.
So, at the PDP phase, I asked Anska, which way we should carry the estimate, and we did DBB at the beginning. So we can do DBB, we can essentially not add anything, or we can carry now a couple extra percentage points to try and be in between the two, or we can carry 5% extra just to know and have our worst case number there, and then start CSD, moving down, or, I think it's really up to the committee which way they would like us to carry it, or you could advise and carry it.
Yeah, we don't have to decide right now, but
Yeah.
it seems, given the pricing that we saw earlier, was pretty robust.
Yeah.
I would argue that adding another markup to allow for version versus the other, I think would be misplaced.
Mhm.
I don't think that's
Maybe we
required.
should-
Well, but if you don't mark up, you should mark down then for DVD.
Well, I think the 5% is anecdotal. I don't think there's evidence to support it. So I think it's mythical, but that one person's view.
Well, but it's important. I mean, we have to decide whether it's mythical or not, I guess, because that's for me, that's the determining factor. 5% is significant, 1%, 5 is significant. You're talking $8-9 million.
So why don't we price it as a DBB for now? And then we'll, do some more research on numbers. Actually, the MSBA publishes some of that information.
Split the difference,
Yeah,
put 2.5 in.
Because we don't have to make this decision now. Shouldn't we take the higher number? So at least we have that number. And if we decide to do with the design build, at least we have that money covered.
At this point, it's the information, it's all informational for you.
Okay.
Right? Real number that matters is the one at the end of SD. But it's a number that you might want to be using if I just want us to be well protected and make to the original point, like anticipating with the town what this project could entail based on the decisions you're making, so that there's, and I think what's also helpful is that the reconciliation process between the two estimators, we can have a robust conversation about that, because this is a big point of contention currently in the public sector as to what the difference is cost wise and what are they basing their data on. So we can kind of explore that a little bit more. I've seen different numbers. The numbers are always debated. OPMs tend to think that this having any escalation doesn't make any sense, but I think it's a unique specific market, and how they're estimating and what they're seeing is kind of influencing why estimators are saying what they're saying. So we can talk it through. And I think if there's any possibility that both are at play, we should at least be aware of that when we talk to the estimators. And they're in this weird world right now. Generally in MSBA projects, I will say that historically, since 2008, estimators have always been, they've given you a number that you will not exceed. The only time that didn't work is in the last year and a half, because things were so crazy. Prior to that, they had like about a 95% success rate. So this is really unusual. So you need to know that the estimators are always looking to give you a safe number because you're publicly procuring money for it. You know, you're going to an override and there's no going back. So it's not quite like a private sector process. So they're very, very, very careful. And that's why these numbers, yeah, they're trying to give you that worst case scenario.
Is the CM at risk fee, is that reimbursable?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So if it's 5%, it's 3%.
Can I just add that I would recommend to this group that the 5% should not drive this decision. What should drive it is your schedule, your complexity, and we don't have to determine it today. But I guess I would caution everybody hearing what Steve is saying and what John is saying, what Dory is saying is 5%. It might not be 5% at the end of the day. So I guess I would just ask that we not get too hung up on the 5%, which is, to Greg's point, not insignificant.
Right. I had a question, well, I guess, or comment. I would rather, when we get to the point where we're able to say to the residents of the town, this is what it's going to cost in addition per thousand. I always want to err on the side of more.
Yeah.
Moving forward than less, because I don't ever want them to think that we're trying to get something under there. So I don't know if that helps when it comes to pricing or whatnot, but I would rather let them. I'd rather price it higher and know that in the end, it will be less money for us to try and have them get to the ballot, and it's more money than they had
Under
anticipated.
promise and over deliver.
Having to go to the
Yeah.
ballot again.
Yeah, because I really don't want anybody to think we're trying to slide something in here because it's significant. So.
Yeah, it's not, I know.
You know what I mean,
But-
Greg? I
But,
mean-
but we have a number, Beth, now that we're at, and now add 5% to that, but we can't just be okay with that. Because that's significant.
It is.
To say, oh, another 5% is significant. For me, it is.
Mhm.
I know, because if neither of these two options were viable, we wouldn't be talking about them. So we could go either way. So if we say one is 5% less and it takes us 6 months longer,
Right. That's exactly what I think is important to look at.
would the town be okay with
That
that?
initial cost.
Initial cost.
Well, so that's what we have to clarify.
Yes.
Right.
Is it apples to apples and it doesn't really matter? We
Which
can
is what I
pick
said, though.
CMR and get this.
Let me do
thing.
some research on projects and we can show what the initial cost was and what the final cost was and what that percentage growth is. And
Because if the costs were the same, then why would not everyone go CMR?
I tell you, all my private clients do.
Because Massachusetts.
Right, because they don't have to worry about that 5%. We're so worried, we're already 20% over according to some, so.
I think also the schedule issue is really important. And if, you know, I think maybe JJ and Skanska in our next meeting should talk about looking at the complexity of the project as a new build, if that's the one that's leaning on, and what that schedule impact would be to do early packages, because I think those two things are really dovetailed with that question about the.
Well, if you have 6% a year escalation and you save 6 months, you're saving 3%.
Right,
So
yeah, that kind of matter a lot.
But they must factor that in. That all must be part of the factors of the estimating.
Right,
I
that's what
mean-
I'm saying, right, that's why the estimator wants.
But if it's 5% after the 6 months and with those escalations of cost over, half a
they
year.
they'll use the term midpoint in construction.
Yeah.
So they escalate to midpoint of construction. So if you shift the midpoint of construction 6 months.
Yeah.
And that also is one of those things I'd like to be able to give them information, accurate information as to what we think that we're looking at here. So that's, right now, I would lean conservatively towards a later midpoint of construction if we haven't decided.
Right.
So,
Is that what we have now? Don't we have construction? We have timelines?
Yeah.
What timeline are we on, I guess?
Right.
The timeline would be based off of this CM at risk.
That's what we're on now.
You're showing?
Yes.
So actually, we'd potentially push it back.
we should push it back if we wanted to get a
We
comparison.
talked about that and that puts us like in
Yeah, like now you're opening a year
And
later.
you're opening in,
January.
27
Yeah.
instead of.
So,
more to come, I guess, is.
Good information.
It was,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Can I add an anecdote to all of this, pushing the schedule? It's admittedly 22 years ago when Birchland was under construction. And we pushed the schedule. Well, I didn't personally, but it got pushed. And the end result was the cement wasn't cured enough when the flooring went in. And for 10 years after, we were in litigation with the general contractor, the subcontractor, who in the meantime went belly up and ended up taking how many $1 million loss. They gave us some money back, but it wasn't a drop in the bucket to compensate for what happened. And what happened, as you know, if the cement is still green, the moisture continues to cure and percolate, and there are uneven floors and cracks.
Separated tile, separated tile.
Separated tile. When I went to vote, I
Mhm.
thought about that, like, see, we shouldn't have pushed that. We shouldn't have pushed that. That's just, I
It
mean.
was kind of like that's similar to the asbestos era when people put asbestos and everything. So
Yeah.
I've lived through that too. I will tell you that they've made the adhesives. So that was on the onset of the green when they were trying to get low VOCs.
Yep,
And the adhesives were horrible. So they've changed that quite a bit now. So you can well, hopefully we'll never, and we also test all the floors for relative humidity before we put flooring down. Because everyone's scared to death now.
and probably I wasn't in on that level of the
Yeah.
detail, but
Yeah.
I'm thinking maybe that didn't happen, but the contractor wanted in and out, and they wanted us in for Labor Day weekend, and we made it. But then we struggled with that for 10
We
years.
had some stucco issues too.
We had some
Well, they
stucco
were
issues.
painting, they were, yes.
Oh.
Lost in-
And,
You're stuck on the northeast, you're gonna.
Right, and
I feel like moving, we don't need to be in for Labor Day. I mean, it would be nice, but if it meant that it had to happen over Christmas break, it was substantially complete by 99% and it just needed that extra month, I would rather that than try to be pushing off
Less of a headache.
here by 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah.
try to make that kind of a move on
Yeah.
a Columbus weekend.
Yeah.
We know that, but
We're going last
I
year.
know it's doable, but
Yeah.
if you have a more natural break or the summer to
right.
get in, it's much.
Maybe it'll
easier.
go smoothly. Right? Because it's all good.
That's the goal.
23 is gonna be great.
That is cool.
You get to follow up on that, Dory. Yeah, fun.
You good?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Design updates,
9 updates.
Ms. Brooks.
Okay,
So we thought we'd start out by just acknowledging the community forum number 3, which went really well, and kudos to Greg, who really, I thought, stepped up and
Holy shit.
handled that crowd.
And said I wasn't gonna say a word, you mean? Almost, man, almost.
Yeah, so there was a tour of the building, which was, I think, helpful. There were a lot of questions. Frank was great answering those questions. I tried to help where I could. I think it seemed to help a lot of people who hadn't been in the building, so good thing to keep doing.
Some reminiscing too.
Yes, a lot of reminiscing. And then you all may have other collections of recollections from the presentation feedback, but what I noted was the immediate commentary about recreational fields and site lighting and infrastructure. Again, the reinforced message that this is a community's opportunity to get this element right, and the school is always both a recreational site and a school site. Concern about parking access to fields, which we've been as a team talking about. Interest in how the project may benefit educational experience. I just want to acknowledge that one comment somebody made, because it's so seldom that somebody says, hey, this is a chance to talk about education.
I was sitting there like,
Appreciation that we did have the concessions building in the project. People clearly didn't know that or weren't sure of that. So that was great. And then also it was great to hear a resident from the neighborhood acknowledge that, they felt heard. So part of all of this is letting people know, yes, we are listening. We're not kidding when we say we're open to hearing what people are thinking. And then overall, it still felt like strong support for the project. And then a really great comment at the end about what does this really mean in terms of tax impact? And, that's been talked about here, but I know that the committee wants to kind of have another pass at the estimate before going in deeper on those numbers. So.
But there was a lot of talk about lighting and practice fields. I'll tell you what, we're pricing a field right now, It's $400,000 to $500,000 for lighting a field. And that's with adequate power on site. So if you don't have adequate power on site, you have to bring power there, it's gonna be more. So just keep that number in the back of your head.
But didn't Dory talk about that you can set the fields up, that like do certain things,
For the infrastructure, if we want,
right?
suggesting, and I'll see it later, is that in this cost estimate, not including in the estimate, but as additional information, we get some numbers on, based on this area. What would putting the infrastructure in place cost us? What would putting the infrastructure and the lighting in place cost us, so that those can be considered when we move into SD? If magically, the MSBA raises the reimbursement rate by $200, then maybe that's information we'll want on hand,
Well, you have to be conscious of the cap on site work too.
Yeah.
Daily reverse
Saying that,
8% construction costs site work.
yeah, I just mean that, I think the information should be in front of the community. And then if people ask, and you can say, this is just really not something we can afford to do, even that is helpful information. And then we have subcommittees continuing to meet. The educational programming subcommittee met. And we primarily focused on the houses, the academic wings, because this is primarily teachers involved in these conversations. Many of the teachers hadn't been to the visioning process, so we pulled up some of the visioning content and talked through some of those things from the educator's perspective and student perspective. I talked a lot about their needs, and it's always great to hear, sort of some things get reinforced, but the priorities around social emotional learning throughout the building. Teachers talking a lot about students learning flexibly in the classroom, but also flexibly out of the classroom, different kinds of learning happening in different places. Very excited about the breakout rooms. The collaborative large group area, which it's not something that exists here, continues to, I'm always interested in people's reaction to that, but it does seem to have a real interest in this community, which I keep testing out because, it's an interesting issue. Interest in cross-cultural, cross-curricular, project-based learning, which is great. See, a lot of these things are things the district's wanting to do. So it's great when you start hearing this feedback from faculty wanting to do it as well. Support for sort of generous hallways that allow more active opportunities for students kind of in relation to classrooms. So students can have a little bit more independence. Eager to see classrooms that are well equipped. That was a big one. That coming back to what's the point if we don't have everything we need there. So I think you really sent that frustration that the classrooms aren't allowing the kind of infrastructure needs that they have today. Interest in sharing those flexible studios like the graphic design studio, the STEM studio, so that they're not buried away, they're where people can use them. So they like that. And the need for personal space for aides and paras in the school, which is always a really great conversation topic. It's something that's sort of never really in the MSBA spreadsheet, but we always try and figure out a way to deal with. But that means in the classroom, being sure that you're anticipating more than one adult in the room for personal storage, as well as thinking about, this is why I like those teacher planning rooms, because you can create an area there of a small set of lockers so that professional staff who don't have a commitment to a specific space in the school.
Right.
Classroom.
They usually get a cubby on the outside hallway.
Yeah, which is not great, right?
Yeah.
And then in some of the priorities on student experience, like the teachers again talked a lot about the need for social space for students, need for charging stations for students, need for lockers to support athletes who have a lot of stuff. Otherwise, students don't like lockers, which we've heard, and dedicated storage for extracurricular clubs. That was kind of a new topic that was good to hear specifically about. And then we talked about the plans and they've been influencing us, and we're going to meet again and look at the overall now that that's starting to gel pretty strongly.
Dory, just two side notes on some of these things here.
Yeah.
The some of the input for the large group area, wondering if we could use that on a community-wide basis to have access, exterior access with a dedicated bathroom nearby so that community could use that, have a key to that outside door, have bathrooms there for town meeting, for, appropriations or whatnot. We don't have
I've
that.
been thinking about that, so I'll show you on plan the current thinking and we can evolve it further.
Just so that's, I mean, we're gonna have the space anyway, just to seclude it with an exterior access. And then along those same lines, If we want some buy-in for the swimming pool, you're gonna help us design that, is that? So I think, and I've talked to others about it, having accessibility in terms of not only a 6-lane pool, but have a separate, waiting in area so that some of our senior citizens could use it after hours without barriers to getting in and out. So, make it a rectangle with that little bump out, or, I think it's things like that will get us more community buy-in, because we can say this is truly for the community, and we'll be able to use it easily.
And it's clearly what we're hearing
Yeah,
from the town.
yeah, and we're gonna need all the support we can get. So little stuff like that, I think that we can appeal to a wider range. You brought it up. I just wanted to bring it up. Thank you.
Well,
Too. I'm gonna pass to Sam, who is over in the Zoom world, I hope.
I am.
to talk about the field recreation meeting.
Yep. So we had a meeting November 10th, so not quite a month ago, with Kevin McGee, the athletic director, and Donna Prather, the recreation director, discussing the fields program and the recreational uses. So our main discussion topics focused on the type, quantity, orientation, and location of the field programs, both existing and proposed. We also discussed the track and field program and supporting sports programs. So javelin throw, discus, shot put, batting cages, sport courts. And then finally, we touched on the topic of the irrigation of the fields. So I think the big takeaways from that were trying to bring 2 softball fields to the program as a priority. That ultimately Kevin had mentioned 2 soccer fields and 1 football field on the western side of the site outside of the synthetic track area that would need to be designated for sports and lined out at the appropriate dimensions, but that the other potentially 0 to 3 fields could be flexible and in outfields. The goal, like I said, would be to bring 2 softball and still have 2 baseball, but really to prioritize that Title IX, ideally bringing in softball and focusing on the varsity fields for both baseball and softball in either scenario. And then having irrigation as a priority for the varsity fields, but recognizing that right now the irrigation on site only works on the baseball field. I think there's irrigation throughout. That was something new that we hadn't heard, but that they've heard a lot of issues with the use of natural turf fields throughout the summer, especially with drought conditions. So that if possible, trying to irrigate those 3 rectilinear fields and then the 2 varsity fields if it's baseball and softball, so that those sports would have continual use without the deficit of dry or compacted fields. Other things we had discussed was the location of the basketball courts. Kevin, they previously had been located closer to the school. Kevin appreciated the educational use for them closer to the school, but had noted the issue of phasing and timing if those were to come online sooner. So the basketball court shifted northeast to where the tennis courts are currently located in the proposed plan. Those are the 2 lighter green programs. And then the idea of a handful of pickleball courts were left closer to the building. Those aren't necessarily part of this project, but has been something that has been mentioned in community meetings and has been raised for interest. Donna appreciated that inclusion because they get a lot of requests for pickleball. So just wanted to bring that to the committee's attention, that we've been mentioning it as a planned program for future phases. If it does gain traction, that there's space there, but it's not something that we're currently looking at for this project.
Can we, just to clarify what we have now, can we do that? We have 5 tennis courts and 1 pickleball, is that correct? Can we convert 1?
Well, it can be used for either
Yep.
tennis or pickleball.
So
It's lined.
can we match that at least, so we have the same that we have now? Does that make sense or no?
To host a tennis meet, I think you need all 6 courts. Tennis courts can be relined to have pickleball as an additional activity. Tennis is a larger program than pickleball quite considerably. So I think Donna's hope was that the pickleball courts would stand alone and not be part of the tennis courts. But there is opportunity to continue that program and line some tennis courts with pickleball if that is an interim solution or something that works in the long term as well.
And I'll follow up that, you know, for the estimating process, the pickleball thing has emerged as over the current time. That's something that, you know, the question would be, do we want to get an idea of what that would cost? Do we want to include it in the estimate, or do we want to just anticipate the location long-term if that's something that
I think we should have a pickleball court as part of this, even if it's a dual as we have now.
Yeah, so the tennis courts are there, so you could have it as dual.
Because I know it's used, it's probably used as much as the tennis court. I do I use multiple.
All you're doing is striping.
You're just lining.
Yeah.
So you do the 6 courts and you can line.
I think it's another selling point to that potential voter who likes to play pickleball. We have a court now. We should have a plan to have it
Yeah, I think the question is really about, so if you see the
6.
the 6 are tennis courts that could have pickleball courts on them.
Yeah,
And then the 3 small ones next to the gym are proposed pickleball only. And that's the new
but
element.
not included in the project though.
Huh?
But not included in the project.
That's the question. Should we just keep the space and not?
Yeah, keep the space, dual line them. Save it for later. I think it is.
Pickleball per tennis court?
Yes.
Is that what you got?
Isn't it 1 pickleball per tennis court?
Yeah, it's one per.
1-to-1.
Yeah.
Can you fit 2?
No.
Kathy,
It's only incrementally smaller than.
Tennis court, yeah.
Like a-
As long as we don't take that away, that's all I'm saying. I guess. So if we have a plan for it.
Yeah, no, I think we can dual line them.
I mean, I'm sure there's 100 people that use it on a regular basis, I think.
No, I'll bet you it's at least that.
Yeah.
And phys ed uses it. They do a pickleball.
tennis is 60 by 120 and pickleball's 20 by 44.
Get one on each side of the net.
Oh, I've never seen it on that.
They're very, very impressive. We just built some summer,
Yeah.
so.
Challenging.
So then we
Which one?
alternate netting then if you're doing
Yeah, you'd have to.
Yeah, you'd have,
No,
yeah.
let's do it the way we have it. Why don't we just
6 courts is a lot.
six tennis courts and make 2 of them convertible?
But line it so that it's still on the
Yeah.
bigger court.
Yeah.
When we move the tennis courts, and I know this is kind of early, can we move the lights that they have there
To reuse
to reuse?
How old are they?
3 years.
Are they just 3?
Tops.
Yeah,
Yeah.
How about, no, they're probably,
I think they're older than you think.
The LED,
I know, yes.
Yeah.
16, I think.
are they LED?
Metal halide.
Yeah.
No, just the concrete footings, I mean, that we put in ourselves and did all the conduit, so the footings for the lights are removable and probably reusable, I think, but I don't know the condition. Just solid.
Typically what we do, just
Demo.
Disclosure is typically we're assuming new at this point.
Mhm.
And if the project's moving forward in SD, we actually send the team to investigate. Again, on the logic that you don't want to go back to the community twice.
Right.
You know, sort of anticipate if we can salvage it, we
Will, and that is helpful to create some cushion, but so we can have the electrical team take a look at them. Often it's the fixtures, if they're newer.
kind of relocating and you're redoing the
We can put them
foot.
anywhere.
We're going to include lights for tennis though, in the
Yes,
project.
yes, that's, and they're already. in.
Yep,
But-
yep.
Okay.
Question I would have too is where the basketball court is in that design is close to where the tennis courts are now, correct?
No, it's in the parking lot.
No.
So
Based on the,
basketball court's not by the building anymore?
no,
No,
based
the
on
pickleball court.
the,
Based on the meeting that
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sam had
with Kevin and Donna, I think that's what you're saying, Sam, right? Is the basketball courts would move over towards the tennis.
Were you looking here, Frank?
Yeah, I can't see.
So that we could do them sooner. If we decide to put them there because we have funding for them, we could do them before this. Because it's separate.
Okay, yes, okay.
Well, that's what she said.
Yep.
Oh.
So
How are you gonna do the site work and have the basketball courts in without the tennis courts? You know what I mean? You need.
I hear you.
to do
Yeah.
Excavating and.
Yep.
The scope of the tennis courts is resurface them or?
They're not there.
Tennis courts,
Moved entirely.
Yeah, the tennis courts.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're currently right
Pool's gone.
next to the.
yeah, where the pool, yeah, exactly.
The tennis courts and basketball courts are all up by the church.
By the church.
And would the basketball courts also be lit, not just the tennis courts?
Yes.
This project?
Yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing about having them close to each other is that they'll
Okay.
be usable later.
One other thing that I wanted to make mention of is that we're waiting on survey information for grading. That will be a big part of the field layout. You guys have a relatively flat site, but since it's such a big site, there are a lot of fields out there. Regrading to make it all around the 2% mark that we're trying to hit for fields. It brings a little bit of a challenge. So that will help to decide the final layout, and then we'll circle back with Kevin and Donna when we have that information to get more sign off on this type of a layout to see if those two softball fields facing each other would work. And
Yeah, there's still some good plan, yeah.
yeah, that there's still some work to do, but that this would be the ideal program if possible.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And then, yeah, you want to keep going, Sam, on talk
Yeah.
about them?
So just as a site plan update, we've started to hone in on where the building wants to be in terms of phasing. So it shifted off of the existing building by another 20 feet. So we're giving in the closest points about 40 feet of swing space. Right now, with that location, we would look to remove the auxiliary gym. It gives us better spacing on the south side of the building to not have to impinge on the woods, and also allows our front door to be closer to Maple Street to be seen. So, and we're not too far from that connection, and allowing the baseball field to the south to support the varsity program. I'm trying to think of other adjustments that we made since the last time. There's the larger oval in the front that goes back to the site focus group of an embracing green. So that has gotten a little bit bigger in terms of parking. We had discussed with Frank numbers, and an additional 50 spaces were allocated to this front lot. So now the overall parking program is about 450 for 150 staff, faculty and visitors, and then about 300 for students. We had also looked to add a smaller branch off of that main oval for district office, LCAT, and early education program. I will say it is a dead end lot, which we don't typically try to do, but it's getting it closer to the district office door. And with a specific subset of users being allocated to that parking lot, it wouldn't be an issue as if they were signed and know that just those people can use that lot. I think it also alleviates some of the comments for fields. There'd be accessible parking in that lot, so it would be a little bit closer to get to either varsity softball or baseball fields. We have
Accessible spots there, correct?
Yeah.
accessible spots in that lot, yes. And at the front of the loop. I wish I had pointing abilities, but I try to use my words. So that small offshoot to the west of the school would have accessible parking, and then there would be also accessible parking at the southernmost point of the oval. The main entrance sequence would have pedestrian seating in different forms. That was something that was requested from the site focus group as well, to have a social embrace and easy moments for the students and staff to engage, whether you're waiting or just having a break on the north side of the building. And then flowing around the building would be different educational opportunities. West, to align with the arts programs, would be somewhat of an outdoor amphitheater and seating within the outdoor courtyard at that western notch would allow a lot of those classrooms and an art program to spill out there to have more formalized areas for learning with tables and chairs, and potentially a chalkboard or projection area, depending on the uses. I think these are all programs that still need to be vetted, but something that we've been thinking about in terms of matching the interior program to the exterior program. And then the southernmost piece would be an outdoor dining space that would extend from the cafeteria and dining commons and allow the eastern wing of classrooms to spill out onto the terrace to use them as flexible learning spaces.
If those spaces in the back south area be covered, so like if it was little inclement, they want to sit outside, because I guess that's kind of like my thing, I like something covered, and then we could use it for summer camp programs and stuff like that. And inclement weather, they have a place to go, it's still outside, but it's not.
Yeah, I think that's a great comment. I think that level of detail with the building, we haven't really gotten into a lot of overhangs or awnings yet. And whether that wants to be a standalone site element, that's a possibility as well. Sometimes you do shade structures, shade sails. There's a lot of different ways that we can go, but I think it's helpful to mention that now so that we can work that into the plans. Site circulation, we're trying to reduce the pedestrian and vehicular connections. So as you come in off of Maple, there's one main loop with a clarity and circulation to bring people to the front door. That allows staff to come in earlier and filter into the parking lot. And then what we haven't decided, we'll have a meeting tomorrow, what group gets to approach the front door, but separating parents and buses, one group would use the main loop and then the other would use the smaller loop that enters off the west. So that smaller western entrance has queuing along the northern side of the track and field, with students also entering into the parking lot from the northeast entrance and then exiting out of the main loop potentially. There's a lot of different configurations. One thing we took from our traffic meeting was that with the two separated loops and a communicating node between the parking lots, it gives multiple configurations for East Longmeadow, and it allows the safety in separation, but if something's not working, you can reconfigure it and just use different signage or practices on site. And then we still have services being entered from the east of the school with a Y turn to access that loading dock. Emergency access would go from the western side of the site down to the southern end to allow fire or maintenance vehicles, and that's the dashed line that you see. The yellow is the pedestrian access. So we're really trying to increase the pedestrian access on site from Maple down into the field spaces and then around the building, as well as out the eastern side of the site, which we recognize a lot of pedestrians use. We are showing a path connection to the south of the fields. That's something that we've discussed potentially being an alternate, but I think would benefit for connectivity on the site. We're trying to, again, separate the pedestrian and vehicular circulation systems as much as possible for safety and really creating welcoming spaces for any of the pedestrians that are coming into the site and entering on the north side, and then the students that are using, 360 access around the building.
Can I ask a question? I'm super happy to see that the kids' access isn't near the street anymore, because I can't believe we haven't lost a kid with that yet. But will they be putting up another light situation, like crossing either for pedestrians or for cars?
We're gonna talk a little bit more about that further on.
Okay,
So
right.
we'll report on the traffic, the initial.
but I am happy they're separate. I think that's important. The pedestrian from the cars.
Moving to talking about the building forum, we've invited Brian to speak directly.
Yeah, it's great to be with you all in person here tonight. So it's an exciting moment where we have this diagram, right, that represents kind of the form of the building in 3 dimensions. And so, it's sort of lifting out of the page now. It can be exciting to look at. Here's where I offer some caveats. This is a diagram. It's a work in progress. It does feel like the design team is really, SMA and JWA have been working really closely on this interconnection of planning with the massing of the building, because this is going to become architecture at some point. And the, integration of the site team in this process means that we're thinking about all the relationships of those three pieces all together all at once. And it feels like now what we're showing is starting to represent the thinking behind it. Where before we had a lot of placeholders. And so work in progress, there's some things to sort of smooth out here. But basically it's an extrusion of the plans. And the plans have been informed by multiple iterations of trying a footprint on the site and moving it around and going back and forth and trying different options. So here we have a representation of what happens when you show the volumes that are involved here. So we're looking from the north over Maple and looking at sort of that inner corner of the front piece of that form is the entry to the building. And it's a super critical piece. Obviously, it's got to be legible from a distance. It's got to be welcoming. We want the building to have a strong civic presence, right? It will be set a little bit further back, right, on the site than it is now, which means it might be set down a little bit lower. So we want to be cognizant of what we can see when we come into the site and start to understand the forms of the building and how it presents itself to the public and to anyone that's visiting, whether you're initiated or not. And it's got to hold up over time, right? For people who are seeing it every single day. So we want it to be a strong gesture. Right now, it is more a representation of the plan being extruded up. So you see the one-story elements in the front. On the left is health, wellness, and athletics, with the gym volume popping up a little bit higher, closer to the field side. And on the right, we've got admin in the front. I think Dory will talk about some of the later sort of iteration of this, where perhaps there's a two-story district office in the front. So might pop up a little higher on the right-hand side. That's why that center element is sort of critical, that it expresses entry, right? That you know where you're going from a distance, but also the scale of it is correct, right? We don't want something that's too low and compressed. We don't want something that's overly grand. So there's, kind of a fine line that we're walking in terms of the scale. So I think big picture, what we want to try to get across here is a sense of the scale of a building of this size. It's a big building. On the upper side, you can see the academic wings, the classroom wings, kind of spreading out toward the south and along a sort of east-west axis, which is very good for solar orientation. We can control the sunlight more better from those windows. And the building overall is kind of a star shape. So we're taking advantage of those voids in between the building clusters so that we get really highly functional zones between those forms. We get, a loading dock area on the upper left. Actually, we can start kind of.
What are the
circling through.
structures on the roofs? They look
So
like.
we're starting to show roof screens for mechanical equipment where we think, we're going to have a few large.
Is that to hide them or acoustic?
It could be either. It could be both. So that's what we want to be sensitive to as we go through design is maybe there are visual screens from the main road, right? When you first come into the site that you're not looking at huge, elements that could, almost be equal in height to the volume of the building below it. And we want to try to tuck those elements into other bigger masses if we can. So what you see is these kind of roof pens coming off of the gym, coming off of the auditorium. And those would be places where we would zone that big equipment if we can. We think that we can do that. And there's probably going to be another one in the center of the building amid a few of those clusters, right? And maybe there's a way we can screen that off well, or maybe you just don't see it from the front.
In the good old days, we could have put all that mechanical equipment over the kitchen in that buried area. But
nowadays, with the amount of equipment we have, we know we can't. So we're trying to be honest early on with ourselves about it, because if you just keep looking at massings where there's nothing on the roof,
It's not realistic.
Suddenly the building appears and there's all that stuff, you know.
I can
so we
tell you
just wanna
that'll
start
be-
opening it.
That'll be on the BE list because I've been
Yeah, that's me. I
several
agree.
jobs already, so.
Yeah,
We want to acknowledge it early on and, you know, get it out there. There's going to be something on the roofs, whether they're screened or not.
Do we know the grade difference from
Yeah,
Maple
that's-
Street, from Maple to the front door?
I think Sam would have a better sense of it, but across the site, I believe it's something like 10 feet. So in the middle of the site,
So from the Maple Street to the current front door, it's about 10 or so, says our GIS information. Again, we don't have survey. So to the proposed front door, it might be another 5. It's pretty flat once you get back there. So I would say anywhere from 10 to 15 feet below Maple Street is what we're looking at. That gives you some advantage to slope the parking lot and hide the cars, but you do then start to see more of the rooftop units.
and over a distance of what, 500 feet, it's fairly gentle in terms of slope. But it does mean your eye is elevated and you'll be able to see a little bit more of what's happening above that roof line. One element we've added here, and we may expand a little bit before we get to the end of this phase, and there's really not a lot more design that will go into this phase, because this phase is really about testing the building scale and footprint. We do the massing to get a sense of potential impacts on the neighborhood, and MSBA will be really interested in that. And being central to the site, there's really not much of that to be concerned about. But we also use this to get a better sense of the environmental qualities and you know, the quality of space even. What are these building masses looking out onto in terms of the courtyards, in terms of the visual or the forested buffer, for example. Anyway, back to the front of the building, that sort of drop-off sidewalk area is really important, that plaza that connects to the front door. So we've added a sheltered walkway element, much like what you have now on the left side. So that's the west side of the health wellness wing, and helps to connect back and provide a sheltered walkway for the drop off that we know, you know, could be almost over to the field on the left.
Was that where the buses would, the kids would get on the bus?
The buses would be in the front, I believe, and
Meaning they'll be on the big loop.
on the big loop, and car drop off will be on the small loop on the left.
So we
So-
haven't established that yet, but there's possibilities for either scenario to happen.
Okay, sorry to speak out of school on that. It often goes back and forth for a while, but we know that there'll be foot traffic going along that side, and so we said we should have something there. We may want to expand that to more of the front of the building, to have more of a collector, if you will. We hesitated to put it in front of the admin because that will encourage gathering in front of those office windows. But we could pull something out toward the curb more. And it could become another layer of space making actually at the front of the building that can be a collector. Again, much like you have now, but just in a different inflected form.
Yeah, we
So,
were chatting about it before, about how, you know, I was trying to ask, you know, what is the attitude towards the current canopy? Is it viewed positively or negatively? It's functionally helpful, but you know, if it's something that people are really fond of, we can try and kind of keep that feeling. But if it's something that feels darkening, then we could pull that away and do it differently, explore it differently, you know.
it is on the north side of the building, so it doesn't get a lot of sunlight.
Frank?
Less weighing in on the canopy, I'll say I'm indifferent on that. If I can have some input on the bus versus parent drop off, I'd love to be part of that conversation. If it sounds like
Yeah.
Sam was talking about, that might be a meeting
Yeah, I think actually next.
sooner than
week we're
later.
Having a second meeting on that.
It's tomorrow.
Okay, my initial thought would be to have the bus drop off in that spot to the left. And not in the big loop. Yes. I know you're gonna have a steadier flow of traffic with the parent drop off, and that bus one is usually pretty short in the morning. It's usually, the majority of the buses are exiting the school by 7 o'clock, if not 7:05. well, you have a consistent flow of parents between 7 and 7:25. So if all the buses are gone, parents are gonna be asking, why can't I go through that loop?
Okay.
So the main one is probably gonna be the one I'm guessing.
Gets the parents better than.
Yes, and it'd be the afternoons where you'd have the 15 buses all lined up at once, but then they clear out within 5 minutes, you know, so. I feel like it'd be easier to move the buses in and out of the side one. Than. And also just the management of the big loop, like, once they don't see buses, parents are gonna pull in, it's gonna be that constant battle we already have of. You know, why can't we go in that loop when nobody's driving through it?
I just don't want to walk that far. I like the covering. I know that there was back in my day, I'd sit with my back up against one of the poles and I'd wait for my ride. And I was happier to have it covered when it was moist out.
And it
It doesn't
gives,
have to be big, but
yeah, that's why I said, I'm not for or against it. I think it does give some. Texture, whatever the right word is, to
Yeah.
the space, you know.
They have additional options. It sounds
Yeah.
like they.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna keep exploring it in different layers. I think, it's just something that we were feeling. It's important, knowing how many students might be walking along there, or even if you have teams coming in and dropping off and coming in, trying to think about some of those.
Frank, you're starting to sound like a designer. Next year. Hit that in a
A
minute.
lot of these meetings lately. so.
Just to follow up on Frank's comments, Gary Brown is invited to the meeting tomorrow, as well as Officer Healy and Bruce. But Frank, I'll forward it to you if you have the opportunity to be involved. That would be great. Otherwise, we'll take your comments into consideration. We have both scenarios
Okay.
playing out. So
Unfortunately, I'm at restraint training tomorrow, so I'm not gonna be able to attend tomorrow. But yeah, I do know you have those other individuals attending. I do have a 6 o'clock meeting up by my office for school council. So if you guys don't mind, if I can dip out unless there's anything else you want to hit on with me tonight. So,
A lot of choices about where your office is.
like I said before, as long as it's a foot bigger than yours, you know.
I gave up for the conference room, remember?
All right, I'll see you guys later. You Frank.
Thanks, Frank.
Yeah, I think we could roll through the rest of the images fairly quickly. So we're, looking here from the southwest. Giving a sense of the relationship of building to the fields on that side. You can see there's not a tremendous amount of extra space, between the building and the fields, but we're taking high advantage of those spaces. I think the next image shows better kind of the driving of that kind of main circulation, main street, if you will, that has the dining commons within it. And then sort of opens out on the end. And Greg, here's the LGI space, large group instruction as a volume kind of within that. Not to steal your thunder, Dory, because I know you're going to talk about that more, but kind of that's where that emerges on the other side. And here you can see the possibility of an outdoor terrace coming out from the dining room.
Talking about right here.
Yeah.
And the potential for outdoor classrooms, learning space that might be an extension of science rooms that have, earth sciences and observatory kind of functions. I don't know if we've ruled out a greenhouse already at this stage, but possibilities for plantings and that kind of thing. It's also just much quieter on this side of the building. These are 2-story volumes on this side. Next image.
So those are 2-story.
Yeah, the classroom wings are 2-story.
And it will be higher.
Yeah.
Those top, okay.
Yeah, which is why the screens up there are probably not necessary, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the design team has taken it seriously, the challenge to keep it a 2-story building.
Yeah.
There's definitely a desire to compact the footprint, and you could go up another level, but that's just another level to have to traverse. It adds to, passage times, classes and things like that. So 2 stories is easier to manage. It also opens up some possibilities in terms of the configuration of the building. We can create sort of mini atrium type spaces without really much, sort of added. Atrium always sounds like, a fancy, expensive thing, but simply if you can open up the floor from one level to another, there's a huge benefit in terms of understanding what activities are going on in the school where otherwise you're very kind of segregated by floor. So I think you'll see that more in the plans.
So just to turn to plans, we did share these. These are slightly evolved from what was shared in the community meeting. To start out with, I want to talk about the district office discussion. So last time we met, we showed the district offices and LCAT and IT as this kind of lump next to the building. And you all said, well, why don't we go ahead and try and incorporate it so that it's part of the footprint and therefore reducing the overall footprint. So that's what we pursued. And yesterday, was it just yesterday? We presented two options, Gordon and Frank and Don and Ryan, to look at a configuration in which we had the district offices all as a one-story element, right where you see chorus and band. And this option, which was the preferred option, where we actually do this as a two-story element. So in this option, you have the early ed classroom, people services sharing their own entrance to the west. And you would be able to enter there, go into the pupil services area. And then within there, there's stairwell and an elevator now that takes you to the second floor, which is district offices and IT. So we're going to go into this in a little bit more detail. So go ahead forward.
And a possible fire pole.
Yeah, he's asking for that fire.
Get down quickly.
Can I have an exit plan?
So this is a close-up of that. At the bottom is the first floor view. So you see to the left side of the screen in the west is a vestibule that would get you into the pupil services area. We tried to keep this fairly compact, not be overly generous, but this does connect through to the video classroom. And on the other side of that are the LCAT offices, so that those are co-located. And then part of the guidance program is at the end of that block, right adjacent to the cafeteria.
That's where the career center would go and your graduation coach and guidance records.
Yeah. And that sped conference room is there because there are meetings that have to happen with families that are coming into the high school for meetings. So they would be able to go, into the school and then into that conference for private meetings, which is different than this conference room to the left, which is supporting the district's meetings with families. So then you would go upstairs from there. You're still on the same slide on the upper image. That's your administrative offices. And again, these may be rearranged later, but basically this accounts for 4 staff offices plus the superintendent's office, 2 secretarial staff, a kitchenette, and another conference room, a more generous conference room to support leadership meetings. And then continuing, that yellow is a continuous corridor into the IT wing, which provides all the offices for IT. And then at the end of that is a tech support office, which actually students can access. So the idea is that that's adjacent to your second floor near your media center. So while we would have a doorway separating this school, it allows students to come in and faculty to come here to get tech support for the school. And then you see that door that says catwalk access. This conveniently aligns with the upper floor catwalk over the auditorium as well.
So no bathroom on the second floor?
Again, you're part of the school, so there are bathrooms.
Is there a bathroom on the ground floor?
Yes, there is one on the ground floor.
Take the conference room.
Actually, I just revised that this afternoon. And where you see on the second floor that admin and kitchenette, I went ahead and put a bathroom there behind that elevator because I felt like it needed it.
And this caused us to add another elevator too, right?
That's my feeling. I think it's smarter to have it because I think in a school of this size, this way we would have one elevator that's actually serving the student population at the academic wing. And this elevator would allow for a night access without any other access to the building.
So there's only one elevator in the main building?
There's one here and then there's one in the.
You didn't need one in each wing?
No.
Okay.
No.
What about the cost factor of that, though? I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean.
Does that negate the need to put, or the benefits of putting admin on the second floor?
I think that's, the comparison of those two wouldn't be super similar, really. And we did explore this without a second elevator, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought in a school of this size, having one elevator that you're dependent on might not make sense anyway, because having the redundancy of a second elevator is going to help in the event that you have an elevator go down. I for students as well. So even though it's not as convenient, the fact that you do have this second elevator, I think is good. And I think low-end lifts are not a great solution. So I'd rather sort of start with that. And, you know, it is a cost. Yeah.
Couple hundred
Yeah,
thousand.
200,000 would be
Yeah.
my guess.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that's, you know. So back to the plan as a whole. So again, we'll continue to make changes. There was a couple other questions on that plan that we were discussing. But to get to that question about, you know, the large group instructional space, to talk about that and all of these things in here, this is generally where we are. We're at the point where we're trying to build out a lot of these individual areas, get the mechanical spaces worked out a little bit further. We've asked the team to provide needs for, based on this plan, electrical room distances and such, so that we can kind of fill out and be sure we're reflecting the square footage that we know the project needs. And we're not, you know, missing anything at this point, but it's still early. And we're like, I think Brian was saying, we're going to basically stop design fairly soon in order to wrap up this phase. When we get in a schematic, we get really detailed with all of this. But conceptually, this is where we are. And you see that what was preferred about this design also was that administration and guidance at the front is largely contiguous, with the exception of those 3 rooms that are pulled off and closer to the cafeteria, which I think is a good thing because it means students have access to that career center, grad coach. You know, it's more within the life of the school rather than separated away, but it does keep guidance and admin together, which was a really big goal. We're really just starting to work in that gym PE wing a little bit more. I want to point out that Alt PE is a really multi-purpose room of a very substantial size. I would not be surprised if you found that you had community use of that room in addition to the rest of your PE facilities, but it's a room that can kind of be used in more than one way. And as we talk about its location and its use, we can ultimately define the finish in a way that might allow for it to serve, you know, as a meeting room or as a dance room or as a yoga room, you know, all those uses.
I think that's a great
That's the
idea.
important thing.
And so instead of the LGI, that would be the community room.
Yeah, it really, and it's up front.
Yes, but I like the dance studio aspect of it, the option for meeting rooms, multi-purpose near the rest of the athletic things. So
Right.
the, you know,
Yeah, weight room is right next to it. And then we put the medical suite up in that wing as well, and the medically fragile classroom, so that there's basically a physicality to that wing. And then the LGI, our thinking, Greg, is that where you see representational doors on the wings that lock the wings off, so that the cafeteria, everything from the front door to the LGI could be open at night and accessible with everything else being protected.
Oh,
So that would allow you to use the main cafeteria space for public meetings, the LGI for public meetings, without even going into those areas. So that was our thinking as well about how to kind of keep some level of control.
the bathroom accessible.
Yeah, with the
In that-
bathroom accessible within there. Yeah.
That's great.
And then you have the outdoor area outside the LGI, which I think is also very nice for public events.
It's a great public space, that whole front
Yeah.
foyer, cafeteria, LGI.
And then
Yeah.
the thinking is, you know, underneath that stair element, the stairs are dramatic and kind of carry you up, but underneath that you have some gallery kind of, you know, little exhibition space, public space. So the wings themselves, we're still working on trying to kind of bring enough light into the middle of them and create a floor to floor connection between them so that, you know, the first and second floor are interacting. So we've committed stairs into those areas. Other things that are important to point out, on the second floor, if you go to the next floor plan, and we've shifted the STEM lab around, so it's bending. There's multiple things happening in the STEM lab. And that makes the graphics lab to the edge there, which is a bit,
second.
that's the second floor. So that graphics lab is across from the media center. So that's kind of a nice relationship because graphics is going to be heavy computer lab. So it's often could be used by multiple. We like the dynamic nature of that STEM lab and then how that relates to the art studio potentially. And then we're still kind of working out all the small group rooms and the kind of texture within the wings. So we're working on that further. You see the elevator, the second elevator is right there on the right-hand wing in the middle of it. Where it says RES.
Yeah, there you go, right there.
That's the second elevator. If you go down a floor, go back a slide. That might help you to see it. So it's kind of facing towards the cafeteria. So we originally had it up near the auditorium, but based on the second elevator concept, it felt good to go ahead and put it in the middle of the academic area instead to really support students.
And then we have the labs distributed, each wing has.
Two labs. And then special education spaces are also distributed. So it's starting to kind of feel like it represents the academic diagram pretty well. And we've gotten all those other spaces, other category spaces in the building in a way that I think keeps the footprint as small as we can, without going to a three-story building.
Dory, what's the approximate GSF of the district offices?
7,000 square feet.
Could you repeat that?
7,000? Everybody was looking to write that number down.
Is that included?
Gross square.
Yes, that's both floors and IT. That whole, everything that's
IT
light green
as well.
and LCAT, all of that together is 7,000. That's 7,000, not including
Not reimbursed.
grossing. The hallway is not counted in that because that's part of the building.
That's district offices, student support services, IT and CAT. Package deal.
Yeah.
So other things we've been working on, we're starting to explore the structural layout, again, the mechanical, electrical spaces. We're exploring the massing and starting to think about the daylighting elements of it, which is getting us into energy modeling. And in energy modeling, we've been debating internally and discussing and exploring different wall types, cost impacts of different wall types. And what you'll be hearing a lot about in the next school building committee meeting is HVAC systems. So in our mind, the outside of the envelope of the building and the systems strongly interrelate now in our design in a kind of integrated approach. So we've been doing a lot of work on that. But we want to, there's a subcommittee meeting that's going to review more of that. And then we're going to present the subcommittee meetings output in the next meeting. So, you can keep, sorry, I think that's. So a couple more slides. So look ahead on the cost estimate we were talking about. So originally we came out of PDP with 4 options. The one that's not listed there was the community building option where we broke that out. Really quickly, you guys decided there's no way. That was just way too expensive as an option. So we did not carry that forward in PSR. And I don't think we have an obligation to price that because we already had ruled it out as an option entirely. We had to carry the base code upgrade anyway. And we have the ad reno that we've explored and the new construction option. So I want to just be clear that my expectation is that I'm presenting to the cost estimator these 3 options for repricing, and that the pool will be removed from that in terms of the pricing, because we really just want to be clear on what the number is for this project. And number has to be developed as a part of a separate project. That way we won't keep confusing ourselves and everyone when we present that. Then
Will we eventually get a price on that after they're done doing this main thing?
you will, and we have that general number, that we've presented. So, but I really think that has to kind of go, I've been sort of talking about how that needs to go to the town council so that it can start to become a project. Ad reno and new options at the moment, just this I want to verify. We are including for both the press box and concessions building, the district office IT LCAT, field upgrades, site improvements, utility connections. So that's all in those numbers, both the ad reno and new. Alternate cost info will be gathered, informationally speaking, but not included in there for additional lighting, lighting infrastructure for the fields. And the rooftop PV array, I think it's good to have that information. That's, again, it's not easily reimbursed by the MSBA, but there's incentives. So I think we should kind of see what our roofs can support and get a number. It's not hard to do.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, roof.
Sorry, photovoltaic array. So
Oh, thank you, because I was going to ask that question because it's such a hot topic. Thank you.
the odds are very high that we're focusing on a heat pump approach, given where the code is going. So that, and in general, the community is going to be wanting to explore where renewables might provide support for this project, either now or in the future. we have to, by code, design for PV as a possibility. That's just part of the new code requirement, and we do it anyway, frankly, because it's been anticipated for a while. And you know, whether or not you're gonna wanna fight to get that in the project now, a lot of it has to do with incentives and what the opportunities are. So I just think it's helpful for us to at least take a look at that and start gathering some useful knowledge to give to you for that.
Sorry, the concessions building, we're including bathrooms in that, just to clarify.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I say concessions, but to me, it's bathrooms and concessions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that included in your gross square footage, the 198?
No. No, I think it's such a different price per square foot that, and again, we had it in the estimate already, so it's not like we didn't include it already. There was a question I had based on things we were just talking about. No, I guess I don't. Okay, yeah, it was the pickleball courts, but we're not gonna toss another thing in there. I was wondering about that as we were reviewing that. So again, this is the base repair option. I know you guys know it, but it was encouraged that I always keep speaking about about the base code option. And again, remembering that the community's definitely not been eager to see this, and part of the reasons is that we reduce classroom ceiling height, we're undersizing our spaces, would not be eligible for MSBA reimbursement. So your reimbursement percent would be extremely low. Some, that's not much. You know, as we talked about, it doesn't meet the educational goals, you know, to stay in that footprint. This information is still very helpful because it talks about what the cost of the project would be if you fail, essentially. If you don't get a school done, you will not be off the hook for spending a lot of money. And that's kind of why we keep that number in front of you to talk about what does it mean to not do a project? You know, what are the code costs over time for the project?
Still
Once
taxes.
Right.
the MSBA looks at the three designs, will then they give you an idea, just so we have that information? They won't do it all.
Not till the end of SD.
Not to the end, okay.
Yeah. I mean,
I just thought it would help our
yeah.
cause, you know, okay.
I know. Next slide is just a reiteration of the Ad Reno 2C option that we've talked about. What we'll be changing just here is that, again, we'll just pull the pool 5 feet away in the diagram, but because we want to be really clear about that. But otherwise, again, the same issues that we talked about that we did explore. This includes renovation of all of these spaces, new pool. Pool will not, the number will not be included. The site improvements for Ad Reno, the field improvements for Ad Reno, but then all the pluses and minuses. So again, you guys will be reviewing this again and making a decision. At the top there, I'm showing you what the renovation and new square footages are. Those are really important, obviously, to how that stacks out. So the number that comes back. And then this is the one that we're not going to bother to go through the motions on.
I think in the end, we're better off doing what we're planning, because I just think it's all going to be in the building. And I think that it's just overall better.
The investigation work that's ongoing, we still don't have a complete survey. The wetlands work has gone forward and things look good, no surprises.
So just curious, what's the issue with the survey? Why can't they get it done?
I don't, Christian's been managing that and he's been struggling to get answers as to why it's taking them so long to complete the survey.
Who is it?
Heritage, I think. Yeah.
Used them for it.
Yeah. I think they seem, because I'm having trouble with them on another project, that they seem to be overwhelmed by. So
That's pedestrian access to the rail trail, a reality in terms of wetlands. It's on the plan.
yeah, and walking through wetland flagged area is fine. Within that buffer is okay. It would have been a problem if the buffer ended up putting the building, you know, across the line. We still could have done it, but it would have been more complicated. So
So we were planning to have access then to the bike trail.
yeah, I mean, so, and that's another thing that we have been carrying is that that pedestrian path. I think what Sam has said is that the connection to the rail trail is not, Sam, do you want to speak to that? It's, you know,
Yeah,
it's not
so
something we
it's-
can formally do yet.
It's a rail trail, so it's a lot higher than the wetlands because it's a former rail line. So to connect up to that would require some switchback ramps, and to work it through the wetlands would likely require some Conservation Commission meetings. I think it's something that we should talk about if that's worth pursuing. We had also talked about breaking that out as a number to see if it's of value to the community to have that full path that runs along the southern edge from the Norton Street neighborhood all the way over to the rail trail. I think there is value. There was some interest by Bailey Mitchell, the planner, the town planner, that there are some additional things that we need to understand. So the survey, getting back, knowing what that difference is in grade to make up. And then it might be worth just asking the Conservation Commission, you know, what regulatory pieces would we have to go through if we construct a walkway or bike path through it. Like Dory said, it's not the same level as a building, and a lot of times they do allow that type of site development, but it would be something that we would have to work through with their commission.
And Sam, the other option would be to have the path along the way, but not make a formal connection between a pedestrian path and the rail trail. I mean, a kid with a bike's probably going to figure it out. But whether we're formally making a connection between those two elevations, that.
I think we should attempt a formal connection, right?
Yeah. So I think probably if we're anticipating building up that connection, that we should include more money for that. To have that there. My point is just, even if we cut that, you know, there's still, is there not, the question for you is there value in having this edge southern path on the site that makes it a little bit more useful, engages students into the woodlands more, you know, even if it doesn't all the way.
The woods, I don't know, with no lights at night. Yeah. I'd be like, you're not going that way. You know what I mean? I don't know. Yeah.
Pathways back there already. It is utilized in a less formal manner. It's actually a really beautiful space. Eric and I had gone back there, and there's a lovely layer of ferns at the bottom and old oaks and sugar maples. So I think from an outdoor education perspective, it's very worth it. Yeah, we had talked about including lights, and I think we had pulled that at one point because it was a lot of lights and a lot of path. But if this is something that gains traction and is of value to the community, it's something that we should start to put some dollars to, just so you all understand what it would cost.
Can we do solar, like a solar motion detector lights, like on a path like that? Because it wouldn't be used that often, but it's there if someone's there. Just a thought as we move along. It could be very expensive, but I thought you don't have to deal with the wiring and whatnot.
Yeah.
You get a motion stage up.
A lot of maintenance issues.
Is it?
Change the battery cell.
Okay,
Especially if it's shaded a lot too. The
Okay.
Batteries fail within a year. We're
yeah,
finding that in a lot of our critical stuff.
okay.
RFBs and. Yes.
Okay. Right.
Good.
Sorry, go back on the investigation there. I just wanted to touch base on a few other things. So there was the preliminary review of the plans with the traffic team. And they did look closely at the Maple Street area and did not feel that adding a signal or turning lanes would be helpful. They actually felt it would be detrimental.
Okay.
Really? A turning lane?
Yeah. Sam can speak to this. She was in on that meeting. I wasn't. Sam, do you want to talk about the traffic conversations?
Yeah, so their concerns in either widening the road or adding a turning lane was that it would actually slow down traffic in the off-peak hours, which is, you know, probably 95-98% of the time.
Okay.
Even a turning lane to go left? Is that what that means?
I think we lost you.
She's muted.
Yep. Nope. Sorry, I just have a small toddler in my room.
There will be a light for walkers for crossing something.
Yeah, and there's some improvement. There's some effort that's already there, and there were discussions about ways to improve the pedestrian crossing.
Yeah. So the minor improvements to Maple Street would really just be the crossings to make them safer, and potentially add one to the northeast entrance. But that a signal would not be needed, and that the turning lane would yes, add some traffic congestion in other hours. So we had discussed that just based on our circulation concepts, how we had aligned Melwood and our entrance, and that they didn't feel that warranted a signal in that intersection, that it would likely make it a safer condition.
And then on geotech, Christian got a verbal, we'll be getting a lengthy written report, but the verbal report on the first 6 wells was positive. You know, the quality of the soils for compaction is very good. Dense till down to 20-25 feet below, which is good. Groundwater at 10 feet is a little high, but not scary high, you know, so that's good. And the quality of the soils in terms of liquefaction is good. No concerns that you get movement, you get liquefaction as well. So that's helpful too. Those are all positives for our foundational design. Good. So then moving on just to some upcoming milestones. I know it's getting late. We do have a day of student engagement scheduled for staff to be meeting with 4 different classes to talk about student experience in the school and encourage students to play a role, you know, with you all. And show them the plans and start getting their reactions. We have an upcoming educational subcommittee meeting on the 15th to review what we just shared with you. The sustainability committee's meeting in advance of our next school building committee meeting to kind of spend more time on the HVAC systems. And that'll, if you are super interested in that and want the deep dive, you should go to that meeting. Our next school building committee meeting, it's really important that we talk about those systems before, you know, the estimate's done. We're going to start the estimate whether or not you've chatted about it, because we've already had to present some assumptions. So I do want to figure out what our next meeting time is. Cost estimate set going out now, December 21st. And then we'll be doing that reconciliation on the 19th. The proposal there is we've tried to give you an extra week there so that we have the end of January up until, you know, we meet again February 8th. So it's 3 weeks in which to potentially have a conversation with town council, you know, so really kind of start to own the project a little bit more, you know, in terms of what the process is going to look like at the end of SD. And then we have the approval of the PSR submittal on February 8th, and then a week later we're submitting it.
So you're gonna want to talk to the town council prior to December 21st.
Well, we talked about it at the last meeting that we should have an informational meeting.
They're aware of the project and asking questions. And I think there was also discussion about potentially talking about the bonding process, you know, how debt is structured, things like that. So just starting to wrap heads around it a little bit, and
Probably,
you know,
I don't know.
When do you think, Kathy, did you have a time? Do you think it?
I was just conferring with President Page about when our meeting was in February, because it's after the 8th or the 9th. And we have typically, but I'm gonna let the president of the council speak. Typically, we've been meeting just once a month.
Are you gonna meet with them in December?
No, we had
No,
this
it'll be
window of time that
January.
we thought would be end of January potentially. Is there any time?
Yeah, so we could always, second meeting in January, which would be like the 24th of January.
that's perfect, yeah. And then. So that would mean that I think we wouldn't need a school building committee meeting in January, because we'd be meeting in early February. But
I do think we still need one to go through the HVAC systems. And I know,
December's a horrible time,
but
the hope would
HVAC is
be,
very cheery though, so.
Keeps us warm.
hope would be to talk about that at the end of December.
24th is open.
Well, that's school vacation week.
Yeah, I know.
Just saying.
Also Christmas Eve.
Yeah, no, I don't mean that
Keep
day. I meant the
kidding.
week. Humbug. Jeez.
That sounds awful.
so, yeah.
Oh, my gosh, that's
Crazy.
hard.
I know.
The 28th is a Wednesday, the 29th is a Thursday.
Yeah, I don't think anybody in the
That's
school
not
system does anything
That's
that
not
week.
good. That's not. So it could be.
We're all kind of hardwired to an academic.
Yeah. When did classes stop?
23rd.
23rd. Okay, so the week of the
19th, 20th, maybe conceivably. I guess we can always go into the estimating process.
it could be first week of January theoretically, but
I didn't know if that was also hard.
well,
You're talking about full building committee? Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yes,
And how long do you think the meeting would be?
we can try and make it shorter and not have any.
More than an hour.
Yeah.
Notice I haven't been the center.
This was a lot of information though.
This was. Needed
Good information.
If I can just say that the Systems and Sustainability Focus Group is scheduled to meet next Thursday, the 8th. To Dory's point, we're asking that focus group to make 2 recommendations to you all related to the green building system rating system to be pursued, as well as a confirmation that we're going in the right direction with the system choice. So I think if that focus group feels comfortable making that recommendation to you all, I don't think we need a lengthy meeting. We're gonna make the lengthy meeting with the focus group next week. So that's my 2 cents on those topics.
And Helen, would you agree that we could,
we'll know what the recommendation is. So we
Yes.
essentially have the information in the estimate set.
we could confirm that information in early January?
I think we can. I'm not expecting a spoiler alert, especially because Bruce is in that focus group. So if that sounds okay to this group, then I think it will work.
Yeah.
So how about the first week of January instead?
Happy New Year.
Yes. I just think you'll get more participation.
Yeah,
Because a lot of people just.
Because if you did it earlier, I'd be like, you should.
Do you want to stay on a Thursday or do you want? Stay with
Bruce is off then, so we.
There's-
Hold on the time.
Bruce is in the key meeting next week, though.
Yes.
All right, so Thursday, the 5th.
Thursday at 4.
Yeah, Thursday, January 5th at 4 p.m. Does that work for people?
It works.
Keep it to an hour?
January.
January 5th.
One
Falls on
reason
a-
why that's been Thursday to get wrapped up. It's
More so than most projects is that the building code is changing right now. So everybody in the industry is trying to understand the implications of the stretch code.
and it's extremely complicated.
So we've been trying to be very, very careful that we don't
Overreact or underreact. That's, we spent a lot of time doing our due diligence.
to understand that.
So
Long
that's,
meeting is the subcommittee.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So back to.
I think that's everything I had, but I think you had on the
I
agenda.
think that actually, the only other thing was a community forum recap, which you covered so eloquently.
You actually got it.
We can skip that one.
That was really a good event too.
It was. I was happy
Really
to see
was.
people
Yep.
there. It was heartwarming because
Hmm.
sometimes you look out there and there's not a lot of people, but there was.
And people willing to give feedback.
They were.
Great.
Well, feel.
All right, so that brings us to new business.
Second.
New
People
business,
dialing in.
okay. All right, then.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Oh, come on, Greg. You.
I was like, I was letting someone.
Oh.
I don't be selfish, you know. You bet.
All right, we have
This is becoming very disjointed. And Ryan.
And if there's no discussion, even though there's other discussion that's going on, I need to do a roll call vote. So, Mr. Crucial?
Okay.
Okay, I'm a yes. Ms. Blair?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Page is gone. I don't know. Ms. Brown, I believe, is gone.
Did, I might just, travel the,
Yeah.
All right.
How's she?
Ms. Hill, she's doing well.
Is that her first?
Mr. Larrigan?
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. Unpredictable.
Ms. McNally? Still on?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Do I get a second freedom?
Ms. Boucher,
Yes,
Sergeant Boucher, sorry.
it works, Boucher.
Benny,
Yes.
Mr. Bar's gone.
We need to be sure she's.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
SD.
Mr. Quimby,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen, he's gone.
Probably would
Okay.
Probably. He would have won.
I think we're,
He's a no.
No.
Happy holidays. We don't see you all. Happy New Year, and we'll see you on the fifth, talk HVAC.
Yes, exciting.